Rose in the Bayou by StephanieSwanQuills. Fireflies lazily danced through the bayou. The baking heat of summer drew beads of sweat along the back of her neck. Evening had finally fallen, and tonight she would see the love of her life again. Rose nervously combed her fingers through her long blonde curls as she made her way to the river, where James had promised to meet once he returned to New Orleans. She had never known an emptiness like this before. It had been a long winter with him away, living the high life with his family in New York City. Rose was stuck as a waitress in a tiny cafe off Bourbon Street. No prospects, no family, just another pretty face. Alone in the world with nothing but her secrets, his dog, and his empty summer house. Rose had done her best to look exactly as she did when they first met all those months ago, in her pretty white sundress with a tiny cross on a silver chain sitting daintily around her neck. She had tripped on the pavement and he caught her before she fell, his strong arm wrapping around her waist as he helped her steady her steps. His smile was so kind and warm, as though he were the glorious Apollo, descended from the skies to mingle with the mortals. And then he walked away, leaving her in a rosy daze. The thought of seeing perfect James again brought a new spring to her step, and she walked faster down the hidden path to the bayou. Every day they had been apart, Rose had written him a love letter, but he hadn't written back once. Undoubtedly he had found someone else, someone prettier or richer, who would look so much better by his side. A sickening anger began to boil inside her, but Rose pushed the feeling down and took a few deep breaths. What mattered was tonight. He hadn't asked anyone else to meet him. He had asked for her, and her alone, and she wanted it to be perfect. The old willow tree rustled in the breeze, long branches sweeping the floor, hiding sweethearts from peering eyes. She saw a tall figure waiting by the water, and he turned at the sound of her footsteps. The moonlight caught his tanned cheekbones and glinting green eyes. Rose felt fresh tears of joy, but she didn't wipe them away. "James!" she cried, running towards him. He froze. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held him close. "Oh, darling, I've missed you so much." It was odd that he didn't hug her back, but James was probably just overwhelmed from being away for so long. She kept her hands on his chest and gazed up at him with a blissful smile. James' face was a blank slate, but he didn't push her away. He gently patted her upper arms. His smile wasn't quite the same. He looked a little awkward, scared even, but he was just as handsome as she remembered.
"Rebecca?"
"It's Rose," she reminded him kindly.
"Yeah, Rose. I'm glad your boss gave you my letter, and that you came here tonight. I wanted to do this in private."
"Of course."
"Yeah, I thought it was about time that we really talked, face to face."
James tried to smile, and he took a deep breath to steady his nerves. Rose cupped his cheek, stroking it tenderly. "Me too. These past few months have been awful. You should have been here with me. But, of course, your family doesn't like me. They just don't understand how much I love you." She brushed her thumb over his bottom lip. He sharply pulled away.
"I need to ask you something."
James reached into his back pocket, and she waited for him to go down on one knee. Rose's heart was fluttering like a spring songbird as she nervously fiddled with the cross around her neck. She could almost hear the bells. He pulled out a pile of letters, wrapped up in string. "You got them! I was so worried your mama—"
"What the fuck is this?"
he whispered coldly. Rose stopped toying with her necklace. I don't understand, James."
"I want to be by your side forever. No one will ever love you as much as I do. I don't want anyone to stand between us. You sent me countless letters over the winter, like we're getting married or something. I went to your cafe a couple times, and I always made sure to tip you nicely, but that's it. This is the first time we've spoken for this long. I don't even know your last name.
James's handsome face became redder with each word, and he was clearly trying to control himself. His knuckles were white as he clenched the letters in his hand. Rose ran her trembling fingers over the clasp of her purse and looked up at him naively. But I know in my heart we're made for each other. Why else would I feel this way? She said. You're everything I ever wanted, James. I just never want anything to come between us. No man, god or beast will keep me from loving you until our dying day. The colour slowly drained from his face, and a spark of realization seemed to shine in his eyes. What's wrong, my love?
It was you. You did something to our dog when he went missing in the summer.
Well, if he wasn't such a loud dog, then I wouldn't have done anything, Rose muttered.
What did you do to Prince?
James asked firmly. She shrugged. I was just paying you another midnight visit, making sure you weren't having any nightmares, when that nasty dog started barking at me. Rose's nails dug into her palm, her head bowed, shadowing her eyes. You woke up, and I nearly broke my ankle when I fell from your window. I didn't want you to think I was stalking you, or something horrible like that. Blood began to trickle from her fingertips. So I ran after that awful dog, even through the rose garden, which tore up my nightdress. But I finally caught him, and twisted, and twisted, and twisted, until he stopped barking. James took a step back, his wide eyes fixed on her. But I make sure to pet him every day for you, now he's nice and quiet. James suddenly grabbed her upper arms, his face only a few inches from hers. He stared at her in shock, and Rose felt her picturesque evening crumble around her. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. As his grip on her arms began to tighten, she fiddled with her purse and slipped her hand inside, wrapping her fingers around something metallic.
I'm only going to say this once. I don't love you, Rose. Stay away from me, or I'll have the police take you straight to an asylum to lock you up with the other crazies.
He shoved her and took a step back. James turned around and began to walk away. Rose pulled her gun out and pointed it at his back. Her hands were shaking violently. I'm not crazy, Rose shouted at him. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she watched him turn around to look at her, and she pulled the trigger. Blood and brains spattered leaves of the sweetheart's willow tree as one side of his face was blown to pieces. James collapsed on the ground, his remaining eyes staring blankly at the stars above. Rose smiled as she walked towards him, tears dripping from her chin and onto her chest, mingling with the summer sweat. The gun lay forgotten on the grass. She slowly sat down atop his waist, blood smearing from her hand as she cupped his cheek and stared at the remains of his face. His mouth was still intact, and she pinched his cheeks into the charming smile she adored. There, good as new, she said sweetly. Rose fiddled with the cross around her neck, unconsciously smearing blood over her skin. Oh, James, Prince is waiting for you back home. I'm sure he can't wait to see you again. His lips grew paler and paler as blood seeped into the grass. The shards of his skull gleamed in the light of the fireflies. Rose planted a gentle kiss on his twisted lips, combing her fingers through his hair. A wide, rapturous smile spread over her lips as she held him in her arms. His body was still so warm, and her face flushed with delight. Rose giggled excitedly. I can't wait for you to meet my parents too.